Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of the Youth Soccer Podcast. My name is Ricky, and with me, as always, is Paul and Phil. How are we doing, boys?
Good
Very
this
well,
morning.
thank you, Ricky.
Great stuff. All right, today's discussion is on winning. Oh, it's a subject that often divides opinion. So where's a good place to start, and where do you see that it fits within the youth soccer landscape?
Big question to open with. Yeah, quickly, just before I'll go on to that, before we get into this episode, I'm aware that I did a pretty bad American accent in the last episode. And I didn't want to come across like I was being disrespectful. My wife's American, by the way. And so if anyone was offended, I'd like to take this opportunity to apologize to absolutely nobody. I do whatever accents I want on this podcast. Anyway, on with the show. Winning, it's a massive one. I'm not really sure where to start. It divides everybody, coaches, parents, players. Everyone wants to win. Everyone feels better when you win. When you've walked off the field, you have a better weekend as a coach, you have a better weekend as a player, you have a better weekend as a parent if you've won. But at the same time, you can almost get that same feeling as winning if you've done everything and walked off the field and know that you've given everything for that particular game, even if you might not have won. And so that's kind of where I'd start. I've got probably a longer answer and more to talk about, but that's where I'd start.
Good stuff, Phil.
I think winning is a priority. It doesn't have to be your priority, but it has to be prioritized somewhere. And I think losing as well, the nature of losing is just as important. Like, what's your relationship to losing? What's your relationship to winning? It's a part of the game, not something that can be ignored. Definitely something that needs to be investigated in a very harmonious way. And in my opinion, I think the game invites you, if you're doing the right things, to win matches, and it's like a byproduct. So I think if you go out and you're like, we have to win at all costs, I don't think that's healthy. If you go out and you're saying winning is not important, losing is not important, I don't think that's healthy either. I think there's a little balance there where it's like, if we do this right and we do this right and we focus on this and we stick together and we do this, we should get the result we're looking for. And ultimately, if you do that and don't get the result, everyone walks off in a way that's with a bit of pride or a feeling of growth or development or just an experience.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it, Phil. And to go on from that, then let's say I look and say, we lose a game. We get to the end of the game, we've lost the game. And first of all, as coaches, players, whatever, we ask, did we give everything? Did we give all of our effort? And then we ask, did we perform in a way that's kind of aligned with our training session? Did we do the things or try to do the things that we've been working on in training? And then you can ask, maybe, did we have some bad luck? And lastly, were the other team just better than us? Because that's where you arrive at the end. And if we did everything we could and the other team were just better, we can reluctantly accept defeat. And I'll say reluctantly because I don't like to accept defeat ever. But if we've given everything and we've operated at, I guess, our capacity individually and collectively, we've been as good as we can be and the other team's just beaten us because maybe they're better than us, then we can reluctantly accept it. And I personally believe that that's the only acceptable way to lose. Because if you lose by not trying hard enough or not giving everything or not doing the things that you've trained to do, to me, that's unacceptable. And having those high standards is a big thing for coaching. It really is.
I think from my point of view, I'm going to come at it from a coach's point of view for a second, because obviously we've got players, parents, coaches. I think that the subject of winning is obviously in competitive sport, it's huge, number one. I think it's also how it gets is somewhat age dependent. If we've got kids in middle school and kids in high school, for example, I think the approach has to be very different. If kids from a young age are being told that winning is the be all and end all, which is something that I see quite often, that to me is not an approach that I would take. I think, Phil, you made the point about it being a balanced approach, and also learning to lose is part of learning to win as well. The two sides of the same coin. But when the kids are in the younger ages, they're going through that process of learning how to win. You don't just suddenly know how to win. You have to learn how to win. And I think for me, how the coach delivers it and how he prioritizes it is the key. Now, when the kids get into high school, there's much more of a competitive edge, much more so than there is in middle school. And so the approach can be enhanced then, and it can be prioritized a little bit more. So I think from my point of view, that how it's delivered by the coach is key. And I think that a lot of coaches need to understand that it's not about you winning. It's not about what you can put on your CV, on your resume and say, I won this, I won that. It's about the kids and helping them learn how to win and then become winners. When we started our club, we didn't prioritize winning. We prioritized the process and we prioritized the philosophy. And that ultimately led to winning. So can you talk a little bit about that, please?
Yeah. Look, I think that was the right approach at the time and it worked for us. Obviously, focusing on the process is always going to be the best way. And usually the results will come about if your process is right or if your process is effective, then you'll be winning in the end anyway, rather than just focusing on winning right at the start and not worrying too much about the process and hoping you win. That way round doesn't tend to work as effectively. Now, that said, I've changed or adjusted my opinion over the years a little bit in terms of winning, because it does depend on, one, it's age dependent, like you just said, Ricky, but it also depends on what you're trying to develop and the level of player that you're trying to develop. Because if we're talking about trying to develop professionals, for example, trying to develop young players to move into the pro game or the top levels of college, if you're talking about that, then I think it's a slightly different approach and a different message. And I've talked about this before. I had a discussion many years ago with Zlatan Ibrahimovic at a game. I think his son was playing and they were only young. I don't know, maybe they were 10, 11. And I said something about, why the boy is wasting time. It's just a kid's game. They need to get on with it. And he sort of piped up and looked at me funny and said, no. They need to learn to be winners and they need to learn how to win early while they're young. And we had a discussion. It was a back and forth and it was amicable. But at the time, I didn't fully agree with what he said. But I think when I've reflected on that over the years and looked at the different levels and what we're trying to do in terms of developing higher level players, I realized that in terms of developing professionals for sure and higher level college players, he was probably right. Some people don't like it and they don't want kids learning about shirt pulling or time wasting or the dark arts, as we call it. But those are all part of the game at every level. And so we need to prepare players by teaching them about that stuff. And it doesn't mean young kids have got to waste time in the 10th minute of the first half. And it doesn't mean they've got to run around pulling shirts all the time. That's not the point. It's about giving them the tools and the knowledge so that they're not playing at a disadvantage against other kids who do that stuff. And equally, then they can use the dark arts to get themselves an advantage over others whenever possible. And obviously, that's kind of how life works. We're all trying to get small advantages wherever we can. Life's not fair, and football's the same. Nobody will give you, Phil, you know this, especially at pro level, nobody will give you an inch. No one will give you anything in football just for being a good person or being an angel on the pitch.
Absolutely not.
Dude, it's a battle. So that's kind of how my feeling on winning has evolved over time. But if we're talking about the majority, the huge majority of youth soccer players, of which obviously they're not going to make it to top college level or certainly not going to make it to pro level, the huge majority, then I think we have to approach it in more of the way that you talked about, Ricky, and the way we approached it with our club when we started. We focus on the process and don't focus too much on the winning part.
I think that you made a point there, Paul, about I said age dependent in terms of a coach's message that he's sending to the kid. And you spoke about the level. And I think it's a valid point because I'd imagine when we were talking about this, I actually remembered that conversation you had with Zlatan. And that was, correct me if I'm wrong, that was at Galaxy. Was it LA Galaxy? I
think it was LA Galaxy playing in Irvine, yeah, at Great Park.
Right. So they're effectively an academy, right? So the level that he's at is a high level. And when you're at that level, then obviously the approach to winning is they've already gone through. If they're already at an academy level, they're already a certain level of player, right? So they're not at the very early stages of technical development, for example. They're already at a high level. So then you can escalate the message a little bit more and prioritize it a bit more, right? So that's how I'd look at that. Age dependent and level dependent.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, and I'll let you carry on with that. I'm just quickly thinking about it. I think his kid at that time might not have been on an academy. It was playing at Great Park, and I think he was playing for a club team, but a good level club team.
Right. Okay. But still level dependent, right?
Yeah.
And when we started our club, we were obviously started at the ground level. So you're right, we adjusted how we prioritize winning at that stage, and over time we introduced it more and more to the point where the kids were then winning the majority of the games, basically. And we developed a lot of winners during that time who went on to play college as well.
Yeah, definitely. And another point to add to that, another little story. There was another club that started, I think, not long after us, and run by two very good coaches. Were doing it in the right way. They placed 100% of the focus on the process, and the winning was almost discarded to the point of it being completely ignored. And that approach made sense in the time, and it was like, they're doing a different thing. This is great. But the reality of that in club soccer is it almost can't work, because parents and players are not prepared to accept it, because those teams, even though the kids were developing and the coaches were doing it in the right way, they lost a lot. And because they lost a lot, people's patience is really thin in club soccer.
Right.
They won't accept losing over a long period. And so a lot of those kids didn't stay in that environment for too long, because ultimately either the kids or the parents decided they wanted to move on to a more successful team that would win. And so that was a difficult one.
Phil, on that subject of parents and winning, why don't you give us a bit of give us an opinion on how you see parents and how they view winning, and how that might impact the development of the kid, and also how staying with a team and team hopping, which is, we see quite a lot of these days, versus continuity. So can you share a little bit of information on that, please?
Yeah, two big questions there. The first one, so the parents' relationship with the player, their kid, I think there's something very innate in there where they don't want to see their child just get rolled over. They just don't want to. It's something like, I know I shouldn't really care. This is the energy I feel that comes from parents. I shouldn't be so focused on this losing here or the winning, but something in me is sensing something's off when we just allow them to lose, or not even mention that what's just happened isn't acceptable. And I don't think they say it in that language, of course, but there's definitely some sort of a, I'm not willing to accept this, and I hope you're not either, and I think that comes from like somewhere very deep, deep. I'm not a parent, but I can only imagine, I can only be humble to the fact that it might be something very deep. And because I sense it in a coach's way as well, maybe not as a parent, but definitely as a guardian for the children or the players, whether they're teenagers, there's definitely sort of like an element of, I want to protect these players out there a little bit. And I have to use my experience to help them feel as safe as possible while they're playing in a game against a team that wants to tear their heads off and win the game at all costs. They need something to support them. And I think the parents can see when you do that and you focus on protecting them and have an eye on the actual scoreline, the parents are very much like, thank you for doing that. Thank you for looking after my child out there. And that's what I sense. So it's not like for me, there's nothing bad. I just think there's an elephant in the living room, hence the reason we're talking about this. When it goes back to the second question that you had there, Ricky, I think it was about the team hopping. The team hopping?
Yeah, players and how that then impacts the continuity, which, as we know, is when a team is being built, continuity and team chemistry gets developed over time. So when the priority for parents and our players is when winning is right up there, instead of sticking it out for a little bit and learning and growing as a team, how does that then impact the development, not only of the player, but also of a team?
I can only speak on behalf of myself, who had the old saying, had more clubs than Tiger Woods. You know that saying? And I can only go into the depths of why I did a lot of club hopping. One, I love wearing new kit. There's nothing better than like being like, you know what, my game's gone to pot. I need to go and, I was going to swear that, my game's gone to pot. I need to go and put a new shirt on and get a new freshness around here. It's going to like stimulate something in me to forget about what I've just been through. Sorry, my earpods are falling out. With regards to the players here, and and what I'm saying about myself in that is I never give myself the chance to really push through the failures with anyone. Like as soon as a failure started to happen and I felt not a part of the team, unless I was on a good contract, I was looking sort of to go somewhere else. And then because I was looking to go somewhere else, calls would come in. That was energetic as well. When really, I think if I'd gone back in time, I would have said to myself, no, there's something for me to learn here. I think one of the biggest mistakes we all make, with all due respect, I'm not trying to pigeonhole everyone into this mistake, but I really feel like it's very important, is we
Don't
give
pigeonhole me into it, Phil. Talk for yourself.
I think, I believe that there's a good chance that we overestimate a lot of people, whether they're coaches or parents or players, and we start thinking they must know so much more than we do. And really, it's about how much compassion can you have for a coach if he's going through something, a parent guiding a player to be like, well, the coach is, the coach isn't the finished article either. We can find a place where we can be the mature person here. We don't have to go looking somewhere else. We just have to read between the lines and see what this team needs. The coach might not be able to see what it needs, but we can as a family, and they need this kind of leadership, this kind of hard work. And you can be the person who helps cultivate that within your team, rather than just saying, we're not getting the minutes we need, or the coach isn't. And this happens, you don't get the minutes. Most players sometimes don't get the minutes they need. And also they can't break through with the coach or other players. So I get it. It's very difficult. All I'm saying is really exhaust it before you start leaving. Really have a look to see it in a very positive way.
Paul, on that, we've seen numerous players over the years who have team hopped. And can you talk a little bit about when a player is on a team, is perhaps not getting as many minutes as you might want, and or is on a team that isn't winning as much as they might want? They then team hop, they go to another team, the same thing happens, and then we see them a year or so later and they've not developed. Can you talk about any experiences you've had with that and what you think of it?
Yeah, I've seen it a lot. And they'll go from team to team, and it will be the coach's fault. They haven't given my kid enough minutes. It might be the other player's fault. They're not passing to my kid. They're playing him in the wrong position. We're not winning enough. And they do this 3, 4, 5 times from team to team, and the kid and or the parent will get a reputation for being a club hopper, we call them here, club hopper. And once that's the case, coaches and other players don't really want to be around that player because they know they're not going to stay around for too long. And I think there's a lack of understanding maybe from the parent more so from the kid, because the kid is a kid. They don't understand it on a deep level. So it's a lack of understanding more so from the parent that they fail to see what's the common denominator. You're going from club to club, team to team. Is it your kid? Maybe it's your kid that they're either not trying hard enough or brutally, I'm sorry, I'll say it, not good enough. They might not be good enough. And so that might be why they're not getting the minutes that they want and that you desire for them. And so you'll go to a different team that's a certain level, but that perhaps your kid isn't good enough for that level, instead of finding a more suitable place for them on a team that they can play more because that's more their level.
Yeah. And that sorry for that leads me into what I'd like to share on it as well. When a player joins who is not getting substantial minutes on a particular level of team, and or is part of a team that is not consistently winning at the rate that the player and or the parent believes they should be, they then go and join a higher level team. And I just want to speak a little bit about the business aspect of it. And what I've seen numerous times is kids in that situation thinking they're bigger and better than what they actually are, or the parent believes they're bigger and better than what they are. They join a higher level team. They now believe, because they've been accepted on that higher level team, that they are. It just re-emphasizes the view that they had. Look, I've just gone from this team, I've just gone to a so-called higher level team. That's because I'm good enough, when really it's the business side of it is actually taken over. And then what happens is, and I've seen this so many times, the kid doesn't develop, but in their head, they will never drop down a level to play at a level which is suited to their ability.
Correct.
Because they've got this idea that they should be up here, even if they're not playing, even if they're not developing, but they've paid the money, they're there. They're part of a winning team, and that's what they wanted. They wanted to be a part of a winning team. But very rarely, if ever, have I ever seen a kid come back down once they've got there, and they just kind of stagnate. So on that subject, Phil, players stagnating and not developing because of the misperception or prioritization of winning over development. What have you got?
Well, I'd like to play devil's advocate, if that's okay.
You love doing that. Go on, mate.
You do love doing that, don't you?
On behalf of Paul as well. Well, at some point, they've gone to a tryout and been accepted into a team. and then something happens 6 months later where they're told really they're not playing at the right level. The system's failed them a little bit because, they've been told that they're good enough to play at this for this team, and they've been accepted into it. And regardless of the process before that, if the parent pushed too much or the team needed an extra couple of players, just to fill up the roster, ultimately the parents there going, right, now 6 months later, and you're telling me this, my player's not good enough. What's been going on this last 6 months? So if they do start to stagnate, I got to put it down to the coach. Like, I think the coach has got a responsibility to keep his squad on point, from the starters to the people, to the players that are getting benched. And I'm going to tell you something. Like, there's been times where I've let players stagnate a little bit to get a result if I had to. If it's something that I feel will change the trajectory of the club potentially, getting a draw with a team that's one of the best in the area or something like that, or win. So anyway, the point about stagnation is I think it's a two-way street. I don't think we can just put it onto the player and say they're not good enough and you're going to stagnate. And how do you get out of it? I think it's more about the coaches taking responsibility for anyone that stagnates in their squad.
Yeah, the coach does have to take responsibility, right, mate? And a good coach will obviously help all players to improve, because a coach that understands how to do it in the right way coaches their training sessions towards the players on the top end of the team. And by doing that, you bring up the middle players and you also bring up the lower players. So everyone should improve over time if you're delivering good, high-quality sessions. They should. But I think the thing that Ricky alluded to and what's right is club soccer, the business part of it, it deceives people. It deceives people because, yeah, it's not the kid's fault, but they get deceived in the sense that a team is willing to take you on as a 19th or 20th squad player as long as you've got the $3,500 to go and pay for that spot. And they'll take you on as that 19th or 20th player, knowing in advance. The coach knows after seeing you in a few sessions or maybe a couple of sessions in a game, look, the chances are, unless this kid improves significantly, they're probably not going to get a lot of minutes on this team, but I'm filling the 19th and 20th spots on my team. The club are happy with me. I'm bringing in some more money, and so I'll bring them in. And then over a period of time, that player doesn't get too many minutes. They're happy in the initial stages because they're on a new team. It's all exciting. And then 4 or 5 months down the line, they're not playing very much. Nothing's changed. And it's like, well, what's going on? I just need to go somewhere else now. Now, the only thing I would add to that is, from the parents and players' perspective, if you're not getting enough minutes on the team that you're on, you're not happy about it, what are you doing about it? Are you training on your own, in your own time? Playing against ball in a wall? Are you dribbling in your own time? Are you doing whatever else you can do at the local field or park in your own time to maximize your chances of getting as many minutes as possible on that team? But obviously, even if you are doing all of that, if you've gone on to a team that the gap between you and the players on that team is too far to bridge, you shouldn't be on that team in the first place. And again, that's not the player's fault. That's an indictment of the business side of club soccer.
Yeah, and just to play devil's advocate, Phil, I understand what you're saying about it is the coach's responsibility, but I'll just drop a little bomb in there. Sometimes the coach gets given players because of the business side of things, and he knows that player is not good enough. He knows that they're not of that standard, but the business side kind of takes over. So I completely agree. It is the coach's responsibility to get the most out of every single player that they coach, 100%. But there's also elements and situations whereby the business side just rules. And that is another conversation. So we won't go there. We'll probably do a separate episode just on that at some point in the future. So just to bring this subject to a close then, lads, winning, where do you prioritize it in your current teams? And we'll finish on that, and then we'll take some questions from parents.
I prioritize it a lot because the teams we work with, or certainly the ones I work with, are of high school age. And at that age, high school soccer, for example, is about winning. It's not necessarily about development. It should be. And if a coach is with players every day, as some high school coaches are, you should be able to impact significant development on all of those players. But high school is about winning. If you don't win and you don't make playoffs, no one cares. And so it has to be about winning. And so if you're not at high school age having some priority or lending some priority towards winning, then you're doing a disservice to your players. And so to me, I do place a big value on it, on the age groups that I work with and the teams that I coach. And I think it's important because there's so much to be learned through winning and losing. And that cultivating an atmosphere and an environment among your team where everyone's pulling in the same direction and desperate to win. That desperate to win is probably a good thing to say, because being desperate to win is essential when you play football. You need to be desperate to win. And so being desperate to win, as long as you're doing everything you can in every game to try and win, and that's a kind of, it should be a desperation to win. There should be no point where you're accepting, we're 2-1 down here, I'm not going to be desperate to try and get it back. We'll just kind of accept it. No, that's not football. That's not how life works. And that's not developing strong characters. So I think that there needs to be a big emphasis placed on it. And I certainly do.
Good stuff. Phil, what's you got?
Oh yeah, beautiful, Paul. Thank you. My priority is the players developing within a system. So they're learning about the game individually, and they're learning about the game as a collective. So they know, well, this works. What I'm being asked to do as an individual works better when this player next to me does this, and it works better for him when I do this. The winning aspect is just a reflection of how well that's going, and that's it. But for me, it's like my connection to a result is important, because winning's important to me because it's reflecting back the work I'm doing with the players on that individual and collective basis. The game's going to talk to me, in my opinion, and say, if you just lost 4-0 while you're trying to do this with this player, something's not quite working here. So I get to go and review it. If we just won 3-2 and it was a tough game against a very good team, I'm thinking, right, we need to keep doing more of what we're doing. So it's like loose. I think my philosophy is watching all these games of football that we've watched throughout all these years, back to when England tried to qualify in like the 70s into the World Cup, and the Polish keeper turned up and just started saving absolutely everything. It's like, I think Brian Clough said he was a clown, the goalkeeper, and all of a sudden he's kept England from going to a World Cup. Just a freakish night. The games are very interesting when it comes to results. You can't have an attachment to the result. It's just going to come back. It's going to come back and show you what your positive or negative toxic attachment is to winning, in my opinion. So it's all about that fundamental player development, player collective development, and is it working? The results will tell us. But I just want to say one thing before I finish, if that's okay, and that's, we just need to, I think as people in the business, we need to be careful of the players that are learning about the game, and then there should be a bridge between, now we've got to start learning about how to get results, because we're going to go into a different area of the game where men and women have livelihoods. Like a college coach has just moved from this country, this city, to another city. He's brought his family across. He will get fired if results aren't good, if atmosphere isn't good. So the players need to learn that, right, this is what we're playing with. We're now involved in a game where people's jobs are on the line, regardless if it's a winning or losing. Or obviously, if you're losing, you're more likely going to get fired. But that mindset of like, I'm playing for people's livelihoods here, and one day my own livelihood, not to be too much in survival mode, but certainly you have to be conscious, in my opinion, that that there's jobs on the line here, and you'll feel an energy, right? This is a different feeling to what I grew up in. So I think it's important to share that awareness with them as early as possible. Say, one day you're going to be playing for your own job potentially, or someone else's job. What's it feel like? How are you going to take on this information? How are you going to turn up match day? How professional are you going to be to help this coach that signed you and trusted you? Now give him the trust back.
You've just
go and do a job for him.
You've just given a great holistic view of winning there that would be very much aligned with US soccer's approach, Phil. And then prior to that, I'm just saying, yep, let's focus a lot on winning. So well done for painting that contrast.
Very good.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important to add the humanist to it. There's a humanist to it. You got to find your heart involved with the people that have trusted you, and you trust them, and that's what makes a good team.
And I think it's easy to say, at the same time, I think it's easy to say, look, all kids want to win. Of course they do. Everyone wants to win. It's just built in. It's human nature. We don't need to encourage it because everyone wants to anyway. That's not true. We do need to encourage it, and we do need to cultivate it. You have to, from a coaching perspective, you can help build a winner. I don't know that someone necessarily becomes a winner on their own just through some experiences and having that innate desire to win. I think you have to cultivate it and push it and pull it and also drag it out of players.
Yeah, sorry, I know we're going to bring Ricky in because I'd love to hear his answer, of course. But I think for me, just finish on that, it's not necessarily just about being a winner. Like, you have to be a winner. It can be just, can you do the job right? Can you listen to what this coach has to say and go and implement it in a game and then be a cog of a winning team. You don't necessarily have to be an individual like I am a winner. You just need to be a good cog,
Yes, no,
which
I
is a
understand.
winning, which is a winning mentality in
Yeah,
my
it
opinion.
is. It is definitely. Yeah, I always wanted to be the main cog for any team that I played for.
And you still are, Paul.
Thanks, mate.
I'll make mine really quick. So my approach to winning, I coach different age groups and at different levels. So there's different criterias, and each of the teams I coach, I approach winning in different ways because of that. The level has been a really big criteria this past season, with new teams. All three of the teams that I coach are brand new teams, and they're all at different levels of development. And so on some of the teams, the winning aspect has not been prioritized because the focus has been more on improving fundamentals and intensity. Whereas at the other end of the scale, with the older teams in the higher level, there's been a focus on winning, but also because it's a new team, there's certain things that need to be in place, first of all. And so we're like 3 months into the season now. The fall season's almost over, so we've got spring coming up. It'll probably change again, the priority. But as of right now, it's been a balanced approach across the different teams because they've all got different situations going on. So that's my answer, kind of sitting on the fence, if you will.
I think that's a
right.
I think that's a good balanced way to look at it.
Yeah, there's so many variables. We're trying to give people an idea of what goes into it, but in terms of how we prioritize winning, but it is dependent upon the team. You don't just have an umbrella approach for everyone. So it's a case of knowing your players, knowing the environment, knowing the confidence level. Whereas there's so many different things that come into it, and it might change from 1 week to the next. Like you might have a priority on winning 1 week because you really need to win this game, and the players need to provide a certain level of intensity or a certain kind of characteristics for that particular game. And so you might emphasize the importance of just getting the win, just getting the win today. A final is a perfect example. No one cares how you play in a final. All you want to do is win. That's it. You've got there. You've got through a tough quarterfinal, semi-final stage. You've got to the final. It's about one thing and one thing only: winning. No one remembers the performance. So that's that. Right. At the end of each podcast, we're going to take some questions from parents, and 2 have been sent in this week. The first one is, what can my kid do to get more minutes? Who wants to go first?
Me? Yeah, I'll go first. Yeah, I think might have a couple of notes on this one, but I've already said it. Obviously, earlier in the podcast, I talked about this briefly. Like if your kid's not getting enough minutes, how much are they doing outside of practice? Are they using a ball in a wall? Are they dribbling on their own? Are they going to the field and shooting? Are they going to play with friends? Are they doing extra fitness work? Are they going out running to make sure they're fitter than everybody else? Club soccer is supposed to be a meritocracy, and you get the minutes that you earn from the effort you put in and the performance you produce. And so sometimes we talk about, look, if a kid or a player is putting in a lot of effort or trying hard, we give them more minutes. And that's not always the case. Obviously, you can put a lot of effort in and try really hard, but actually perform badly. Now, does it mean you should stay on the field just because you're putting in the effort, but you're actually performing badly? No, that's accountability. That's how football works. So it can't just be about putting in the effort. You've got to be able to perform as well. And look, the thing about being able to perform in a game, it comes from confidence. Where does confidence come from? Confidence comes from preparation, knowing that you've done all you can off the field, you've practiced a lot, you've worked as hard as possible, and you step onto the field. We all know, or not, maybe everyone doesn't. I certainly know the feeling of stepping on the field and thinking, I'm okay, whoever I'm going to play against. It doesn't matter what level or how good they are. I'm going to be okay because I know I'm a good player because of the amount of time I've dedicated to being a good player. And so I'll get the minutes that I deserve because I know I'm going to be able to perform. So for a young kid that's not getting the minutes that they think they deserve or the parent thinks they deserve, are you doing everything possible off the field outside of your team practice, which might only be a couple or few hours a week? Look at all the rest of the time you've got for that week to improve. Are you doing everything you can outside of that to make sure that you maximize your time or the minutes you're given when you get them at the weekend? And if you're not doing all of that work off the field, which I would suggest having had these conversations for many years, most players are not doing that work outside of their team practice. And so it makes a bit of a mockery then of coming and saying, give me more minutes, when you're not actually doing the work necessary outside of team practice to justify getting more minutes. That would be my answer to that.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Okay. And then we have a second question from a parent. I feel as though my kid should be playing in a different position. Phil, how would you answer that?
I think if a parent comes up, sometimes they have an intuition like their player, their son, daughter isn't being utilized in potentially the best way. And I think you have to take, like as a coach, you have to take it seriously, but then simultaneously, I mean, there's a certain set of fundamentals, especially at our level. There's a certain set of fundamentals that you should have, but you should be looking to work on. Where if you get put in any position on the field, you should get to know it. I think it's really important for players to understand different positions. One of the best things you can do as like a centre forward is understand what a winger has to deal with to try and get the ball in the box, and how you can make it easier for them by providing them space or wherever it might be. So I think there's lots to learn in the position that they're in at the moment, and they've got to see that out until the nature of the game changes for them. If they're playing in the defensive position, I'm going to guarantee you have opportunities to attack if you want to show that. You know, you just got to have, like what Paul says, if you go out and do the work and you get your fitness right and you're playing as a right back and you think you should be playing as a right winger, plenty of opportunities for a right back to show that you're good enough to play as a right winger. If you have the energy to get up, show it, and get back and do your job. So if my opinion is, if the parent does come up and say, I think he's playing in the wrong position, I think it could be a very easy conversation to say, well, what position do you think you should be playing in? The parent then answers the question, and say, right, how can he start implementing those qualities that you think he has in the position that he's in? Because ultimately that's what I think about the game. Good centre backs can play in midfield. Good midfielders can play centre back. Good centre forwards can play right back if you really, really want to learn this game like properly. So there's no, he's in the wrong position, he's getting held back, or she's getting held back, and things aren't quite working as we want, and it's all going to work if they go into this position. No, learn how to play that position you want to be playing in the position that you're in. But probably very, very similar fundamentals.
Yeah, a good play. I think that's a great answer. A good player can play anywhere. A good player can play anywhere. Who's the best example from the pro game in the last 20 odd years? Wayne Rooney, for me. Could have played any position on the field and possibly been the best player in that position, or among the best players in the world in that position. He would have been one of the best right backs. He would have been better than Gary Neville. He would have been one of the best centre backs. He would have been a great holding mid. He would have been a great 8 or 10 in midfield. He obviously played on the wing. He played as a number 9.
Case in point, Paul, that what he did in the MLS that time, where the keeper went up for the final goal at the last minute.
When he played for DC United.
He's chasing back like a right back, puts a tackle in just like a right back, then sprays the ball onto the other throat just like a right back for someone else to get the assist. Usually at Man United, he was the one in the.
Okay, well, we'll finish on that because, as you both know, I played against Wayne Rooney. It didn't end very well for me. So we're going to finish on that. And yeah, good episode, boys. Cheers.
Cheers, lads.
Cheers, Ricky. Well hosted.
Great hosting.
Well hosted, Gary.